can't see him coming down my eyes, so I gotta make the song cry. I can't see him coming down my eyes, so I gotta make the song cry. Good dude, I know you love me like cook food, even though you know I gotta move like a crook move. We was together on the block since free lunch. We should have been together having Four Seasons brunch. We used to use umbrellas to face the bad weather, so now we travel first class to change the forecast. Never in bunches, just me and you. I loved your point of view cause you held no punches. Still I left you for months on end. It's been months since I checked back in. We're somewhere in a small town, somewhere locking them all down. Wood grain, foreign change, armor all down. I can understand why you want a divorce now, though I can't let you know it. Pride won't let me show it. Pretend to be heroic.
We are currently interviewing the great Dr. Frazier O'Leary, and I just thank him so much for taking time to have a conversation about his journey from his early days and to where he is currently now. And he means a lot to a lot of us growing up, and I just want to allow us to have an opportunity to hear, you know, where he's come from, and so you guys can get to know him and hopefully fall in love with him too. So this is the awesome, great Dr. Frazier O'Leary. How you doing?
Great. Now I'm blushing.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Dr. Frazier O'Leary is a staple point in Northwest. He is a person that a lot of people in my generation, previous generations, even my parents' generation, they've come to know and respect, and there's many, many legends of him. So we just want to, you know, start with the creation story of who he is, and see if we can just paint the picture, and also see if he can, you know, give us his point of view in terms of what Washington, D.C. is, and what it was, and what it has come to be. So you originally are from Virginia, correct?
I was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Okay.
First 6 years of my life I spent in Boston, in Somerville, which is a borough, I guess, of Boston.
I didn't know that.
And my father was a naval officer during the war, during the Second World War in the Pacific.
Okay.
And came back to Boston and got out of the Navy. He was in the reserves. Got out of the Navy during the end of the 40s.
Okay.
And then went back into the Navy, I think during the Korean War.
Okay.
So he was a career naval officer from 1952 until 1959, which is when they had a big riff in the Navy. They got rid of the reserve officers, and so my father, when he was 51 years old, in Norfolk, where he was in charge of the amphib branch of the Little Creek amphibious base in Norfolk. He was unemployed, but run it back to when we came to Norfolk. We came to Norfolk when he was in the Navy. And I went to elementary school in the, I guess the second and third grade in Norfolk. And then we moved to Richmond, where my father was in charge of the...
I remember Richmond being a part of your story, because I know I was doing research and it kept saying Norfolk. I was like, no, he said a lot about Richmond during your formative years.
Yeah. We went to Richmond, and I went to school in Richmond for the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And that was before I played baseball. When I was in Richmond, I was a swimmer.
I didn't know that.
And I was good at it. I came in second in the state in a couple of events in the freestyle and the backstroke. But then we moved back to Norfolk. And I started playing baseball when we went back to Norfolk. I just saw a bunch of guys playing baseball, and I got onto a team, and so that started my baseball career. Really, my father was a baseball player in college, and he played a lot of different sports in college. And
what was your position of choice?
I was a catcher.
Catcher?
I was a catcher. I went out for the first team. They didn't have a catcher because nobody wanted to be a catcher, right? And I loved it from the first time. I got to be sort of in charge of what was going on the field and things like that.
So essentially you're kind of like the quarterback in a way. You're calling the plays,
So that I wound up being the quarterback or being the point guard. I wound up
Yeah.
playing those positions.
That makes sense.
And I played football in high school. I was on the team. I really just went out to be with my friends kind of thing because I played baseball.
Yeah.
And I played 4 years of American Legion baseball
Wow.
when I was in high school.
Okay.
I was not a good student.
I remember this part of your story because
Yeah.
you used to tell us at school.
Oh, it was true.
Yeah.
I read a lot,
Yeah.
but I didn't really care about being a student. I didn't get, and I was really good in Legion,
Yeah.
but I didn't. And let me take a side note. When I was in 1959, when I was in the 9th grade,
Yeah.
the governor of Virginia closed the schools in Norfolk
Wow.
rather than integrate the schools. So
How long was that?
for a semester,
Wow.
we were out of school. The white students were.
Right.
They didn't close the black schools in
Wow.
Norfolk.
I did not know that.
That's how. I didn't know it either
Yeah.
until I was much older.
Yeah.
Which shows how stupid people could be.
Yeah.
So the black students went to school normally, and
Yeah.
the white students went to school in a church basements and
Wow.
places like that. I have no
So
memory.
you guys weren't really off. You were just kind of
Well, we were.
relocated.
I don't know. I don't remember what it was. I know we went. I went to a basement of a church.
Wow.
And but the interesting thing, there were 17 students in Norfolk, black students, who were called the Norfolk 17,
Okay.
and they integrated these schools in Norfolk. And so one of them came to my junior high school in the spring when the federal government came in and said this was illegal.
Yeah.
And so we had one black student out of 1,500 students.
Wow.
But it wasn't like you see on TV.
Yeah.
It wasn't like people out protesting and things
Yeah.
like that. She was in a different grade than I was, and all the grades were on different floors. And the same thing happened when I was in high school. She came to my high school. I just found her.
Yeah.
I never knew her. I've tried to find her for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And so we have connected
Wow, that's incredible.
on telephone.
Yeah.
And hopefully when the virus disappears, we'll
Yeah.
be able to
That
see each
should be-
other face to face. And because I have a lot of questions
Right.
of her about what it was like and things like that.
Did she tell you if she's still in the Virginia Commonwealth or she?
No, she lives in. I think she lives in Maryland, but she was
Okay.
she was a DC teacher.
Wow.
But I didn't know that either.
Wow. That's
And
incredible. Yeah.
so I have a lot of questions for her.
Wow. That's
But
incredible.
so that was my high school. Was I was the class clown.
Yeah.
In junior high too. I was the wittiest in junior high and the wittiest in high school.
I was always wondering when we were in school, and you told us about that briefly, about how you weren't really that engaged in school. Was it that you felt not challenged, or you just felt you'd rather be in the baseball field, or what?
I have no idea what caused it. I was an honor roll student until I got to
Yeah.
the 10th grade.
Okay.
And when I got to the 10th grade, my grades
Just
did more than
plummeted.
plummet. And
Yeah.
I was telling somebody yesterday that my grades were underwater. They were below sea level.
Wow.
But I didn't. But I failed a lot of classes.
Yeah.
I failed physics twice. I failed chemistry twice. I
Yeah.
failed the math after.
What about English? Because you're.
I got passing grades in English, but they
Okay.
weren't. I was in an advanced class, which probably should have been an AP class.
Right.
But I didn't. I never read a book the whole time I was in that I was supposed to read.
Right. Right.
I was reading books all the time because
Right.
I spent a lot of time in the library.
Yeah.
But I didn't do my homework.
I see.
I just barely graduated. I really graduated. I don't know if I told you all the story. My mother came and begged my English teacher to pass
No,
me.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I got a D in English my
Wow.
senior year, and I graduated with like a 1.8 or something
Wow.
like that. And I went to. So I was still playing baseball. My only goal in life was to be a big league
player.
baseball player.
Did you want to stay as a catcher, or did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I loved catching.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I loved it, and I was good.
Yeah.
So I went that summer when I was playing American Legion, my third season.
Yeah.
My coach had gone to the Norfolk College of William and Mary,
Okay.
which
Know
is
that.
what Old Dominion College became my freshman year in college. My freshman year in college was Old Dominion's first year
Wow.
as Old Dominion College. It didn't become Old Dominion University for about 10 years.
Wow. Okay.
And I went because I could get in because it was like all you needed was a high school diploma to get in.
Right.
So that's how I got in.
Yeah.
And I went out for the baseball team, and the baseball team was fabulous.
Yeah, you guys won a.
We won the NCAA
yeah.
Eastern Regional Championship.
In your freshman year, right?
My freshman year.
Yes.
Well, that was my only year because my study habits hadn't changed.
Oh wow.
So I got that letter from the college saying that you're on probation, I guess.
Wow.
And my father said, "Hey, get a job or go in the service." And I was crying. But he was right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I joined the Army.
That makes sense.
Just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He was a naval officer. And so then I got the letter in December of 1963.
That you got in.
And January 22nd, 1964, which was 2 months after Kennedy was shot. That's
Right,
how
exactly.
long ago it was.
Yeah.
I joined the Army.
Wow. And it says that you worked in the infantry division.
No.
No?
I was in the Army Security Agency, which was the military branch of the Army.
Okay.
I was a teletype operator.
Oh, okay.
And so what a teletype operator did was we would type in messages, and it would put them on this yellow tape.
Yeah.
It would go into a machine and would be encoded and then decoded.
Wow.
And the information would be sent all over the world. So
Okay.
I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know how to type.
Yeah.
When I first got there, I can type a little bit now, but I'm not very fast at it.
Makes sense.
I think, and this is a true story, I think I cheated. I started the test before it started when I had to take the typing test so I would pass it.
Wow.
So I played baseball when I was in school for the Signal Corps. I went from I started off at Fort Jackson in South Carolina.
Okay, I know that.
For basic training, which I
Okay.
really enjoyed.
Yeah.
There was a lot of physical stuff, and I really enjoyed it.
Right.
Then I went to Signal to teletype operator. Signal, comm center specialist is what I was.
How many years did you do that assignment?
Well, I got my orders to go to Vietnam right after I graduated from that, 8 weeks. So
Wow.
I got to Vietnam in August of 1964.
Wow. Okay.
And so I was a teletype operator for that year that I was in Vietnam.
Okay.
Which was interesting because we were in this little small building, which wasn't a whole lot bigger than this house.
Right.
But we were the Criticom relay station for all of Southeast Asia.
Wow. Okay.
So every bit of information that came from any place in the world had to go through that little building.
Wow. Okay.
So if they had just blown up that building, it would have stopped all communication.
That's interesting.
Um,
Was that a strategy why it was centralized like that, or is that there's another reason why you guys didn't have many other stations?
Well, there was one other station in Vietnam, up in Phu Bai, which is higher than Da Nang, northern Vietnam, and not North Vietnam, but northern South Vietnam.
Right.
And there was one in Thailand, there was one in the Philippines, in Japan, all over the place. There were only 2 in Vietnam.
Wow, that's interesting.
And I don't know how they do that now, but anyway, I got orders to go to Ethiopia.
Okay.
From Vietnam.
Yeah.
But I also had applied for OCS.
What is OCS?
Officer Candidate School to become an officer.
Right.
And I was accepted, so I went to infantry OCS.
I see. And then from there you worked into becoming a captain.
I was trained to be an infantry officer.
Okay.
But I was in military intelligence, so when I left OCS, which was another interesting experience that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
It was hard physically, but it was good hard physically.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I got in fabulous shape.
Yeah.
So then I was assigned, I went to an officer training course for intelligence, which I didn't do very well in.
Yeah.
But then I got assigned over in Arlington.
Okay.
So I moved to Arlington, Virginia, to the headquarters of the Army Security Agency.
Okay.
And when I first started, I was a military police officer for about a month. And then I was assigned to be the executive officer of the headquarters company.
Okay.
of the base,
Okay.
and it's a really small base.
Mm-hmm.
And the headquarters company had about 600 men in the company, which is about 3 times the number of people in a regular company.
Before, yeah.
But they didn't live on base.
Okay.
They lived off base.
Okay.
But they were all, I was in charge of them.
Wow.
And I got promoted to, I was a second lieutenant. I got promoted to first lieutenant in a year.
Yeah.
Then I got promoted to captain the next year.
Okay.
And then I got out. So I got out of the Army as a captain.
Is it okay to make a connection that possibly that was a time that sparked maybe your interest in teaching, or did you?
It didn't spark my interest in teaching, but it sure as hell sparked me
Okay.
to go back to college.
Yeah, I see.
I still wanted to be a baseball player. I was playing baseball. As a matter of fact, I was playing at Banneker.
Okay.
They had a night league down at Banneker, a men's league.
You used to drive from Arlington to Banneker just to play?
Yeah.
Wow.
But really, I drove to Fort Belvoir because I played for the team down at Fort Belvoir.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would drive from Arlington to go there. But we played our games at Fort Belvoir too.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I could still play. And I was playing in the summertime. And then I went to American University. I started American University as a second semester. I was able to transfer 15 points.
Makes sense.
So I started as a second semester freshman in September of 68.
Okay.
I graduated in December of 70.
So you were there when King passed.
I was in the Army when King passed.
Okay.
Right. When King passed, I was at Raleigh's. I don't know if you remember Raleigh. Raleigh's was a men's store. It used to be in the city. Your mother would know.
Yeah.
Raleigh's and Heck's and Woody's.
Oh yeah, Heck's.
All those places were
okay.
On the shopping plate. There used to be a thing called the Washington shopping plate. That had Garfinkel's, Landsberg's, Woody's, Raleigh's, Heck's. All those stores were on this one shopping plate.
Makes sense.
And I heard that King got killed, and so I was appointed by my base commander. I was the XO at the time, to put together a platoon of soldiers in case we were called in to help supplement the military that was in the city.
Yeah.
If we'd ever gone into D.C., it would have been really interesting because all the people that I recruited for that platoon were draftees.
Yeah.
Were not in favor of being in the Army at all.
Yeah.
And I all of the black soldiers that were in the headquarters company I recruited to go.
Yeah.
They probably would have all just left and gone back into this. They would have gotten out of the Army and gone then. So we didn't get called.
Wow.
Thank God.
Do you recall the? I know you say you were in Raleigh's, but what? Because people my age, we only read about it. We see it in films. We see it in scenes. But describe what it was like to be in the city with.
Well, I didn't go into the city.
Okay.
During the when the civil disobedience was going on.
I see. Yeah.
You couldn't get in. You couldn't drive into the city.
It was that bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They had soldiers on the bridges and stuff.
Wow. Okay.
And I wasn't in the city because I lived in Arlington.
Okay.
And but the interesting thing was, at that time I was married, and my wife was in a tutoring program at Richardson Elementary, which is in Northeast, far Northeast, and I got involved in the tutoring program, and there was a student that was my tutee, was named Michael Downing. He lived at 53rd and Clay Terrace.
Clay Terrace.
Do you know anything about Clay Terrace?
You told us about it.
Okay, well, Clay Terrace still has that reputation.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, his mother was named Lucille Downing. And she called me up and she said, Mr. O'Leary, because I work with him every week. And she said, Mr. O'Leary, don't come into D.C. Because, it wasn't safe to be a white person driving in D.C. at all.
Wow.
I mean, there weren't any deaths of white people. I don't think that any white people were killed in the city, but there were like people pulled from their cars and beaten up and stuff like that. So I didn't get a chance to go back into the city for a while.
Okay.
And then I don't know if I told you all that when I became a teacher, a couple of years after I became a teacher, Michael was in junior high by then, at Evans Junior High, which is right up by Kelly Miller. Did you all play at Kelly Miller when you were playing with Cardozo? Played Woodson there?
We played HD at HD's field in front of that weird tower building. So I think that was HD's field. I don't think that was Kelly back then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, Michael was at Evans Junior High, and I think he got into a fight with a kid in the library.
Yeah.
And somehow the kid got a butcher knife and killed him in the library. Killed him in the library.
Wow. In middle school?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Well, it was junior high then.
Junior high?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that
That's
was
young.
a traumatic event in my life.
Wow.
And so then I got out of the Army and I went to AU. And I was captain of the baseball team.
Yeah.
I had the worst season of my life when I needed to have the best season of my life.
Yeah.
And so I had another year left. I still have a year left of college eligibility.
Yeah.
But I was depressed because my dream had been.
Yeah.
But I was old,
Yeah.
and I was 26 when I graduated from college, and they weren't hiring people who didn't have. I still could play. I had a really good arm and I could hit.
Yeah.
But I had this bad year of hitting.
I see.
And I had been student teaching at Garnet-Patterson in the fall of 70.
Okay.
So after my student teaching, my principal hired me. And so I graduated in December of 1970 and started teaching at Garnet-Patterson on January 4th,
Interesting. Question.
1971.
Was it always located where it is now?
Yeah.
Garnet?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So I observed there before I was a student teacher even. So that would have been 1970, maybe 69 in the fall, as a student, education minor.
Okay.
Education was my minor. English was my major.
Okay.
So I started teaching English at Garnet-Patterson in January.
Okay.
And I loved it.
How did you feel the kids took to you as a teacher? Because this is primarily still an African American community.
It was all
It was all-
African American.
okay.
Yeah, there wasn't at Garnet-Patterson. It was all African American.
Okay.
And I was coaching basketball there when I was student teaching.
Yeah.
And so I had a real good. I never had a problem with my relationship with my students.
Yeah.
The problem I had my first semester of teaching was that because I was a really successful student teacher.
Yeah.
Seriously, everything
Yeah.
I tried worked.
Yeah.
I had a great cooperating teacher who was a veteran teacher at Garnet-Patterson, Britannia Capers. And so I tried everything that I tried as a student teacher when I was a regular teacher. Because what had happened is each of the 5 English teachers gave up a class.
Okay.
And I taught basically seniors, or not seniors, but 9th graders.
Yeah.
And so I had 9th graders that were almost as old as I was. I
Wow.
mean, so they were like adult. Some of them were 17. There were a couple that were 18 in the 9th grade.
Yeah.
But I never had problems with the students.
Yeah.
I really had problems with making it wasn't working, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I realized it soon thereafter that the reason it worked when I was a student teacher was Britannia Capers was standing behind me telling the students, "Don't you?"
Exactly.
And she wasn't there anymore.
I see.
So I had to learn.
Okay.
And so I learned by doing, as John Dewey would say. And I became a better teacher every year, I guess.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I started coaching the girls' basketball team there.
Okay.
So I was the girls' basketball coach at Garnet-Patterson. And then the girls graduated and went to Cardozo. And they talked to their coach up there that, because I was the phys ed teachers changed,
Yeah.
and the principal wanted the phys ed teacher to coach the girls basketball team.
I see.
And so I coached the girls. I was assistant coach of the girls basketball team at Cardozo before I went to Cardozo.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that was 1 year.
So you were doing both. You were at Garnett, and then
I was teaching at Garnet, but I was coaching the girls basketball team.
Okay.
And then and I was taking a couple of classes at UDC, DC teachers at the time.
Wait, it was called DC's Teachers?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah. UDC, before UDC was UDC, it was DC Teachers, Federal City College, and Washington Technical Institute.
All in one. Were they all in the same location?
No, they were all in different buildings.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Federal City was downtown.
Okay.
UDC was right over by where Carlos Rosario is right now at 13th and Harvard.
Yes.
11th and Harvard.
Yeah.
That was UDC.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Wow.
And Washington Technical Institute was someplace else that I don't know.
Okay. Oh.
And so then I started, when I got to Cardozo, I walked in the office and they had just changed football coaches.
Yeah.
And the new football coach just introduced himself to me. And I guess he'd seen me coaching the girls basketball team. He said, how'd you like to help me with the football team? And I said, sure, I'll help you, but I'm not technically, I can teach passing and I can teach kicking and I can teach catching.
Yeah.
But as far as defensive line and
plays,
all that stuff,
Yeah.
nah, that wasn't me.
Wow.
But I did, so that's what I was. I was an assistant coach. I was kind of like the gopher, not a gopher as far as equipment and stuff like that, but I was like his right-hand man as far as, do you think we should try this kind of stuff?
When did the swimming come into your arsenal at Cardozo? Because I
Never did. No, because here's the deal.
Yeah.
When I after football season, I was the assistant girls basketball coach.
Okay.
And I also was the assistant boys basketball coach.
I see. You didn't have time.
And then I was going to be the assistant baseball coach for the veteran baseball coach.
Okay.
He got into a thing with one of the assistant principals.
Wow. Okay.
And said, I'm not coaching baseball.
Okay.
So they didn't have a baseball coach, so they asked me to coach baseball.
Wow. Okay.
And so that year I coached 4 different teams.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And that was the last year. Well, I coached football for 3 years.
Okay.
77, 78, 79. No. I guess 77, 78. And 78, that would have been the class of 79. So in 78, no, I coached the fall of 79 was the class of 80. Okay, so 77, 78, 79, I coached with him.
Okay.
I was his assistant coach. We got better every year. The 79 team almost made it to the playoffs.
Okay.
Was a really good team.
Yeah.
In fact, homecoming of the 79 team, we played Dunbar at Cardozo.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard to believe, but the entire stadium was full.
I could believe that. Yeah.
All the way from 11th Street and Florida Avenue.
All the way
around.
It was still that curvature, right?
Oh, it's the same stadium.
Wow. That's
but I mean, it was packed.
Wow.
And but then he got riffed. The coach got riffed because he was a driver's ed teacher, and they got rid of some teachers.
Yeah.
So the principal said, Mr. O'Leary, I'd like you to be the football coach.
Like, wow.
And I had just gotten back from my first vacation I ever had in my life as a single guy. And 5 days before the season started or something, I said, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I coached the football team. A couple of the assistant coaches stayed on. 27 guys on the team.
Yeah.
They all stayed on the team, and we had a perfect season.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow, you say. We didn't win a game.
Oh, okay.
It was perfect.
That's incredible.
But they all stayed on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still am in touch with almost all the guys on the team.
Did you decide to coach next season, or you just?
Oh no, the principal said thank you very much.
Yeah,
but the thing was that if I had been the coach the year before, we would have had a really good team.
Yeah.
Because all the really good players left.
That makes sense.
And Cardozo never had a good football team after that.
I can believe
until the '96 season.
Was that with Cash, Octavius?
Yeah. Octavius Cash,
Yeah.
Sheik Pearson.
Yeah.
Those guys.
Yeah.
They were the best football team I've ever seen in Cardozo.
I've seen highlight
oh my goodness.
Yeah, because Cash came back and he played it for us, and then I saw it online. I was like, yeah, he was really a big deal.
Oh, he was great.
Yeah.
And he probably wasn't the best player. I mean, he was the all-met quarterback.
Yeah.
But Sheik Pearson was the best player on the team.
Wow.
But we had two defensive linemen that were all met. We had the best tight end. We had the best wide. Manuel Talbert.
Wow.
Played in the American Arena Football League for a long time.
That's incredible.
He couldn't play in the NFL because he had no cartilage in his knees.
Wow. He played that
and
hard.
yet he played in pros for a long time.
Yeah.
And Stephen Davis was the running back. He was a great. And they only had 19 guys on the team.
Wow.
Everybody played both ways except for Cash.
Okay, that makes sense.
He's the only one. I just talked to him day before yesterday.
Yeah, I see him a lot online. He has a lot of Cardozo pride.
Yeah, he's at Hampton Institute.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hampton University now.
That makes sense.
Doing really well. Really well.
That's awesome. So now we're around possibly early 80s. So everyone knows, across the United States, there was this big influx of, cocaine, crack cocaine. So you were at Cardozo during that time when the big crack boom happened. So would you be able to speak to, what happened to the student body? Did you see a shift in terms of the behavior?
Not really.
Okay.
I went to funerals.
Wow.
Okay, that I'd never done that before.
Yeah.
And probably some of them were drug related.
Yeah.
But the thing that affected me more was PCP.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
With kids on PCP.
Yeah.
Because their behavior was such.
Yeah.
We had one student. I left a PTA meeting one night, and he got shot right there at the corner of 11th and Clifton Street.
Wow.
And I mean, I heard the gunshots and raced down there, and he was lying dead in the street.
Wow.
He was in the choir, but that was probably a murder.
Yeah.
So we had students who were murdered.
Yeah.
It was a bad time to be around.
And then especially the location of where Cardozo was, because you guys are between Clifton Terrace and then there's Garfield at the bottom.
The funny thing about being between Clifton and Garfield,
yeah,
and people that live in D.C. now, or the people that live around Cardozo now, don't even understand CTU, right?
You called it what it is, yeah.
They don't know what CTU is.
Yeah.
And like Tim, do you know who Timmy Taylor is?
I heard.
Okay, well, he was the leader of CTU.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. He's
still rocking and rolling. He's still alive, doing well.
Yeah.
Right. But that was really interesting. What CTU meant.
Yeah.
It was Clifton Terrace University. Right?
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with school.
What is a university? Because I moved here in '99. I was like, what is the university part about?
It was just somebody thought about it. I think.
Okay.
I never understood it either.
Yeah. I was like, what is that?
But the interesting thing that happened because by that time, Cardozo still hadn't become, the neighborhoods hadn't gentrified at all.
Yeah.
And the student population hadn't changed from being 95% African American or African origin.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we didn't have I didn't start getting Latino baseball players on the baseball team until the late 80s.
That makes sense.
Okay. once we started getting Latino baseball players, that's kind of when the neighborhoods, the population changed a little bit.
I see. Okay.
But the CTU and Garfield didn't. That relationship, which was an antagonistic relationship, never seeped into the building.
Even though those kids weren't they zoned? Were they zoned for Cardozo?
Oh yeah. They were very, and like there were a lot of different neighborhoods
in there.
Uptown and 3400. 14th Street had neighborhood. Everybody had like an identity, but the big ones around us were, Clifton Terrace was the biggest because it was the biggest.
Right.
And Garfield was second.
Yeah.
And those were our neighborhood
schools,
gangs, but they weren't even they didn't consider themselves crews or gangs or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they did deal in that kind of stuff.
That makes sense.
So, but the neighborhood hadn't gentrified yet.
Mm-hmm.
There was always this, even when I was at Garnet Patterson, there was always this undertone of Cardozo's going to be changed into condominiums. Because it's
on
like
the hill,
prime real estate in the city.
It's like even when we drove in and I looked at it again, because when I went there as a kid, you take it for granted, but now I'm seeing it. I'm like, my God, we're this perfect location. We could see everything
because it's on the fall line.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the highest part of the city.
Yes.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's the highest part of the city. It's not just Cardozo.
Yeah.
The fall line is a east to west.
So it goes like this, and then it drops down.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, it goes from east to west.
Okay.
So that part of the city where Cardozo is the highest part, all the way to the cathedral.
Yeah. You can see that. Yeah.
So it's still on that fall line.
Yeah.
So did you ever see the fireworks at Cardozo?
Yeah, we went to either Cardozo's Hill or we went to Howard's Hill, but it was better at Cardozo's Hill.
Yeah. So I was telling the story yesterday about because I've been on the roof of Cardozo.
Okay.
And on the roof of Cardozo on a clear day, you can see the mountains of Virginia.
Wow.
Seriously.
Wow.
And you know what you can see just from being at the football game at Cardozo.
Yeah.
You can see the Washington Monument. You could see on 9/11, you could see the smoke from the Pentagon.
Yeah.
You can see Frederick Douglass's house.
Exactly.
You can see Maryland.
Yeah.
You can see all this just from Cardozo.
Yeah.
So, but it's a national historical site. So they can't sell it.
Okay.
They can't do anything with it. Now that it's been renovated, they can't do anything with it anyway.
Yeah.
Because that was always the fear that that white people were going to take over that.
How far back does that date? Because
I know people talked about it happening when in the 70s.
Wow.
Early, about that.
Wow.
But it wasn't necessarily. Well, it was always like the white power structure was going to do this.
Yeah.
Now, as we know, a lot of that has come true.
I see.
And because if you go into Cardozo's neighborhood now, there's a woman named Roz Gonzalez that lives right across the street from Cardozo right now. And the block that she lives on from 13th Street to 12th Street, those row houses, 20 years ago, you could have bought all of those houses together for $150,000.
Wow.
And you can't buy one of those houses for less than $1 million.
I can believe it.
And so that whole neighborhood, I go to Greater First Baptist Church at 13th and Fairmont. That whole, all those neighborhoods have gentrified. You don't see black kids walking around the neighborhood.
What about the congregation? Is it still African American?
Congregation is still African American.
Yeah.
It's getting very much older.
Yeah.
Disappearing kind of congregation.
Makes sense.
A lot of the churches, black churches in D.C. are like that.
Yeah. My neighborhood church was, not neighborhood church, but the church I grew up in was Metropolitan on 14th
and that's not even there anymore. That's in Maryland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a sad sight. So, I really did not know. You're blowing my mind. I did not know there was conversations about the fear of gentrification from the 70s, but you saw that it started to take effect.
When you call it the fear of gentrification, at that time it wasn't like white people were going to move into Cardozo
Yeah.
on the hill.
Yeah.
It was that somebody was going to buy it and sell it,
I see.
and because nothing had been at that time, nothing had gentrified.
Yeah.
You know, Georgetown had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Georgetown used to be a black neighborhood.
Right, I heard that.
Okay, so Georgetown had become all west of the park
Mm-hmm.
had gentrified.
Mm-hmm.
There were when I moved into my house on 13th and Farragut,
Mm-hmm.
there were two white people on the block.
Okay.
So it was a predominantly middle class black neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 50-50 now
Yeah.
on this block.
Mm-hmm.
And the neighborhoods in this neighborhood,
Yeah.
Neighborhoods are gentrifying. And, you know, people pushed out because they can't afford to live in the city.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the political apparatus in the city
Mm-hmm.
looks the other way,
I see.
as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah. I see.
for education and for housing.
How do you feel that would impact schools? Like, because it's interesting that we started the discussion about how you witnessed one of the first movements of integration in Virginia, but now that you see this other form of, you know, people moving in, schools are changing, neighborhoods are changing. How do you feel as if that affects a demographic of students, essentially? Do you think that changes their learning or their confidence, or?
Well, it depends on where you are. Like Cardozo is now 50-50 Latino and African American.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but it's the same economic. The economics are the same.
You're saying, okay.
So there's a tension there between those two different cultures.
Yeah.
We've had a sporadic white person come to Cardozo since I've been there.
Well,
I had a white guy play baseball for me for 4 years.
Yeah, because we had one guy, but he was from Russia, I think. So that's different. But,
But I mean, there weren't. It hasn't. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 5 or 10 years in that Cardozo's neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because when the neighborhood started to gentrify,
Mm-hmm.
it seemed to me, just driving around, you know, because I was driving up and down 13th Street every day,
Mm-hmm.
that the people didn't have any children.
Yeah.
They were moving in.
Mm-hmm.
They were single couples,
Mm-hmm.
or they were gay couples,
Mm-hmm.
and there weren't any children.
Yeah.
Now you see people pushing children,
Exactly.
and where they're going to go to, and the schools, like the neighborhoods, like I'm in Ward 4,
Mm-hmm.
and since I'm on the State Board of Education, I go to all the schools.
Mm-hmm.
Like the schools that I service, like West Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
When West was here, and even I never was here during the school day
Yeah.
because I didn't retire till 2017.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was looking at West right after I retired,
Mm-hmm.
and I was home because Myra had just passed,
Condolences.
and so I'd look out at the playground, at the kids playing on the playground,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, this is what America's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
There are all these kids of different races playing together on the playground.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Now West is down the street
Mm-hmm.
in a travel space or whatever you call it,
Mm-hmm.
and it still looks like that.
Okay.
And there's a lot of the schools that I go to in the Ward 4,
Yeah.
you know, they're integrated schools.
Mm-hmm.
They're not predominantly. Well, they might be predominantly African American, or they might be predominantly Latino,
Right.
but they're integrated.
That makes sense.
I don't know about Cardozo.
Yeah.
I haven't noticed it so much. I noticed it in the middle schools.
Mm-hmm.
In Ward 4, we have 2 middle schools.
Yeah.
But not so much in the high schools.
That's interesting.
So that the integration, but they're still neighborhood schools.
Mm-hmm.
So Cardozo will be interesting in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, we say that all the time, like amongst ourselves, that those, I think in sociology they call them thrill seekers. They're the first group to move in.
Right,
and then
right,
after
right.
they get comfortable, then the more family-oriented families come in, and then they have children. So I can see Cardozo being that, and that's a good thing. I think that diversity will make.
Yeah,
us
yeah,
more,
yeah. No, I mean, I think it is too. I think
Yeah.
that's. I mean, I grew up in a. My father was in the Navy, and the interesting thing about Norfolk
Yeah.
is that Norfolk was segregated. All right, I mean the buses were segregated.
Yeah.
I guess there were all those signs, but I didn't ride the bus that much when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And we were on the base, the naval base.
Yeah.
Norfolk is the largest naval base in the world.
Yeah.
And we went to the commissary on the base. We went to the movie theater on the base. We
Yeah.
went to the gym on the base. We did everything on the base.
Yeah.
And went to church on the base with my father. My father and I went to church. They were a mixed marriage, my mother and my father. My mother wasn't. He was a Catholic, and I grew up as a Catholic with my father, but my mother wasn't a Catholic.
Okay.
So my siblings went to church with my mother,
Yeah.
and I went with my daddy.
Yeah.
But the bases were integrated.
Wow.
So you went to the commissary, and there were black people going to the commissary. You
Yeah.
went to the gym, they were playing with black people. You
Yeah.
went to the movies, and they weren't segregated.
Yeah.
So I never, and my mother was involved with the United Church of Christ.
Okay.
Used to be a congregational church. And she was really involved with it.
Yeah.
So there were black people in our house with the church.
Yeah.
And there were Latino people in the house
Yeah.
with the church. So we weren't raised that way.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, now the neighbors weren't happy about a black person going into our house. That's for sure. What happened? We all right?
Yeah. We're good. So this was always going, but that.
Those thrill seekers,
Yeah.
as you call them. I mean, like I was the only white. There were maybe one other. While I was at Garner-Patterson, there were at one time or another there was another white teacher. But I just never. The only time that race entered my mind. This is. I was coaching the girls' basketball team at Cardozo.
Yeah.
And we were playing Anacostia.
Yeah.
And we came out of Anacostia to get on the bus. And it was when Roots was on TV. Okay?
So it's the 80s, yeah.
Whatever year that was.
Yeah.
And these guys were outside and they were Roots. And they were throwing rocks. They weren't throwing them like throwing them at us like hard or anything, but throwing them
like taunting
in our area.
Yeah.
And the girls sort of surrounded me when we got on the bus.
Wow.
And they didn't throw them at the bus or anything like that.
Wow.
But I can't remember another time in my life where now I can talk about all kinds of incidents with when Myra and I were together.
Yeah.
As far as like being in a store and Myra would be in line, and I'd be behind her, and the person on the cash register would say, "Can I help you, sir?"
Yeah.
And just look through her.
Look past her, yeah. Wow.
Myra wasn't the person you wanted to look through. I just would walk away.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
As it explodes behind you. Man.
But so it was. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Cardozo with gentrification.
That makes sense. I also,
because all these neighborhoods, it's just fascinating driving around D.C. now.
Yeah.
Like 8th Street Northeast.
Yeah. Speaking of 8th Street, that was a scary sight back in the day. I mean, just 8th and H was just way different, but now it's just
Have you driven on 8th and H in the last?
We went there last November, and I was like, wow, this is kind of cool.
Well, you ought to go this November, this December. Just drive down.
What does it look like now? It's like,
Where am I?
wow. That's yeah. I remember back in the day that place was really
and there are all kinds of neighborhoods that are like that.
yeah, yeah. Because we're staying at a hotel now by New York Avenue. And I remember back then before, all these.
Oh yeah.
Whiz. I do want to speak about the AP program at
Sure.
Cardozo. So, were you instrumental in bringing that to Cardozo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cardozo had an AP class before I started teaching AP classes.
Okay.
But Mr. Ballard
Mm.
and I had a lot to do, I guess, with expanding because at one time we had 13 AP classes at Cardozo
Okay.
when it was at its apex.
All English or was
No.
Okay, I see.
No, we had just all different subjects.
Okay.
So we had 13. I taught English language and lit,
Mm-hmm.
but we had 11 other
Wow.
teachers teaching different. Well, no, Miss Pierman might have taught 2 different AP classes,
Okay.
but there were a couple that might have taught.
Yeah.
Mr. Fox might have. I don't think he might have taught 1 or 2, but we had 13 separate
Mm-hmm.
AP courses,
That's interesting. Okay.
and it's the last year I taught.
Mm-hmm.
I taught AP to all the seniors,
Yeah.
and it was the best year of my life.
Mm.
It was fabulous.
Wow.
And the results were spectacular as far
Yeah.
as I was concerned.
Yeah.
We didn't have any 3s, 4s, or 5s,
Mm-hmm.
but we had 11 2s.
Wow.
And 2 means you're ready for college.
Yeah.
And 2 is that you can't get a 2 without being able to write a good paper.
Yeah.
All right, you can not get a 3 with a good paper,
Yeah.
but you could mess up 1 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't get a 1 if you gotta do better than
Yeah.
a 1 to get a 2.
Yeah.
So I was really excited about that.
That's interesting.
They have, I don't know how many courses they have this year.
Mm-hmm.
I can find out and let you know.
Okay, I appreciate that. So, you still, very much so, you keep the tradition and this high spirit for AP, because that's actually something that every December you host a reunion for the
Right.
AP
This will
class.
be the first virtual reunion.
Oh yeah, during
And
COVID.
it's our 20th reunion
Wow.
too.
Wow.
So it'll be interesting to see how. I hope we get
Good turnout.
200 people on Zoom. It'd
Yeah.
be fine with me.
Yeah.
We'll figure out how to put people in rooms so they can talk to their friends and stuff.
Yeah.
It won't be the same kind of thing.
Okay.
I'm not going to have like everybody talk about themselves or anything.
That would be
I'll
long.
probably have everybody just introduce themselves
Yeah.
and maybe I'll put them on a clock.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. As a person who went to college and then graduated, I still feel more connected to the AP class and those reunions more than anything, because it was like an opportunity for us to stay connected, see where your alumni have gone and what they've done. And through that, you've introduced me to Edward P. Jones, and I believe Pelicanos came one year, and then every year you were always bringing in people to encourage us, empower us to go after what it is that we want. So that's a beautiful thing.
I have in this house
Yes.
your book.
My book?
Yeah. I have a book that Edward P. Jones signed to you
Oh, yes.
that you didn't take with you, I guess.
Yeah, I think he signed it after I left. I think I remember he did.
I think it's right over there.
Okay.
But
I'd love to get it.
I'm not sure. I know it's in the house, and I hope that I'll find it. I think I
Love
know
to
where
have
it is.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
I think it's all Ann Eager's children.
I haven't read that one. That would be beautiful. I'm looking for something to read. Yeah, he was awesome. And then I remember you hosted a lot of speaking situations. Like Pelicanos came a few times and he talked to our class, even during when The Wire was happening.
Right.
Yeah, because you have a really good relationship with him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I consider both George and Edward as close friends.
Awesome.
We've had. I'll show you. I think I have a whole bookshelf with nothing but Penn Faulkner authors,
Yeah,
signed copies of their books.
that's incredible.
There's a lot of them.
That's awesome.
No, that was a great. I just resigned from the board of Penn Faulkner
Okay.
I'm emeritus now
Okay.
because I'm old.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm still on the board of the Toni Morrison Society.
Awesome.
That's when I saw you last.
Yeah.
When we gave at a memorial service for
in
her.
Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, thanks to you, she is my favorite author. I remember you used to always talk about how she was yours
Yeah.
as well, and then you had us read
Song of Solomon.
Song of Solomon. I know Rashida's class, she read The Bluest Eye, I believe. The Song of Solomon changed my life. I read it over and over.
Yeah,
and
so
over.
do I.
Yeah. It's just like there's different sections that connect with me on each read. I remember when I first read it, the stuff on the roof stuck with me, and the feathers and all that, and yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So I have to thank you for that.
Sure,
definitely.
sure.
So now I do want to talk about what you're currently doing in terms of your position with the Board of Education, Ward 4. That role, how do you feel about it? And
Well, it was my wife was going to retire in 2018.
yes,
But then she contracted stage 4 colon cancer.
sorry.
And she went through chemo, and we thought everything was working, but it didn't. And she passed in September of 5 days after her birthday, in September of 2017. And for the next, really for the next year almost, I was like, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because I teach at UD. I've been teaching at UDC since the 80s.
Yeah.
And but anyway, my son called me up. My middle son Ryan called me up, and he was at the Safeway up at Piney Branch, and said, "Dad, there's a guy getting signatures for the vacant seat on the State Board of Education. Why don't you run?"
Yeah.
And I guess Myra just sort of looked down and said,
Yeah.
get off your butt and do something that you're involved with.
Yeah.
So we got the signatures and ran in 2018 and against the mayor's candidate and kicked butt.
Wow.
And so I've been on for 2 years now.
And you just won.
And we just won, but nobody ran against me this time. I don't, and see, people say, well, that's because you're doing a good job.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I hope that's why it is,
Yeah.
but nobody ran against me. So with the virus
Yeah.
and no one running against me,
Yeah.
it made it all better. So now I'm Zooming, but I didn't really do much as far as running on Zoom since I wasn't running against it. I was looking forward, to be honest, to having an opponent,
Yeah.
seeing what the opponent would say about what I had done for the last 2 years, because I know I've been very vocal
Yeah.
about what the system is not doing. And I would have liked to have answered their questions, but nobody ran against me.
Makes sense.
So it's been interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think we don't have a real voice as far as power is concerned, like all these other state boards of education all over the country.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get it to change, trying to get that to change, to have the State Board of Education have a little more say in who the chancellor is or what goes on in schools and things like that.
I see. But what do you guys do have impact on, like in terms of decisions? Because you just told me as I walked in, you are doing a book drive.
I'm doing a book drive, but that's just something I thought of.
Okay.
That hadn't got any connection to. It's just because I know how important books are.
Exactly.
And it didn't. I started it before the virus. I started it in January, but then when the schools were closed in March, it gained a different flavor to it.
I see.
So because I couldn't go to the schools and give them to students, I could go to the food sites.
Okay.
There are 5 schools in the ward that have food sites where people come every day to pick up food.
I've seen that. I didn't, cause we don't have that really in Atlanta. We have different type of sites, but now I'm seeing, okay, that makes sense.
And so I deliver books to the food sites.
Okay.
So what you're seeing in my living room right now is nothing like what my living room was like a week ago.
Yeah.
Because we've delivered over, and when I say we, it's really just Ryan, my middle son, helps me, but really delivered over 14,000 books.
14,000
in a year.
Books. Wow.
Yeah. So right now I'm not asking for books.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask after Christmas because we're going to put the tree up
Yeah.
we're going to have Christmas in the house
Yeah.
for Myra.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to get rid of all these books right now.
Makes sense.
And so I'll leave our conversation and go take some
Right,
books to
do
some
that.
schools and then do it for the next week.
So do you want to continue this into 21 or are you
Oh, yeah, I'm going to start after Christmas and I'm
Okay.
going to announce it again.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if someone wanted to donate some books, let's just say if they have a whole collection, you know, what do you recommend they do?
Get them to me.
Okay.
Call me. Now, I don't know who's listening, but if someone in D.C. is listening,
Yeah.
to just call me at 202-236-2184
Yeah.
or oman9@aol.com, and
I'll get it to you.
I'll come get them, or they can drop them off. People have dropped them off on the front porch, and I've gone to people's houses and picked them up.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
there were 2 women who did a book drive
Mm-hmm.
in the summertime.
Yeah.
They collected 5,000 books
Wow.
in 2 days, and we distributed those to some high schools and middle schools
Yeah.
and elementary and pre-K.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So let me ask you this: in terms of your legacy, you've been a baseball player, you've been a military man, you're a family man, an educator. What do you want when people speak of you the next 50 years? What do you want to be spoke about the most? I don't know if that's perfect English, but does it make sense?
He did everything he could.